Welcome back to The Garage. Gerald here with you, of course. My rankings of the last 10 years of the Academy Awards always gets a ton of engagement and feedback, and I want to thank all of you so much. We're diving into another edition in that series today. I will tag as many of these as I can in this video for you, although you can also find them on my playlist for rankings, predictions, and countdowns. I have already done my rankings for the Best Picture winners. I've also done all of the acting categories, including lead actor and actress, supporting actor and actress. And on today's video, I'm going to dive to what they call typically below the line categories and not those top 6 prestigious above the line categories. I'm going to be giving you my personal ranking of the last 10 Oscar winners for animated feature film. There are timestamps below if you want to jump ahead, but I do want to let everyone know real quick about channel memberships because I am asking for your support. If you are a fan of the Academy Awards, of awards season, and really if you're a fan of movies, and definitely if you're a fan of this guy, you should be giving me a couple bucks a month to help me keep the machine going out here. You get all kind of sweet perks, including custom emotes that you can use in the comments section on any of my videos, as well as my live streams. They include a emoji of my head with the beard intact, don't worry. You also get Timothée Chalamet, Mikey Madison holding her Oscar. We all love that one. The mom from Parasite. I also recently added Tom Cruise giggling like a fucking madman. Toni Collette from Hereditary doing what she does best, which of course is mothering very angrily. And of course, Queen Ariana Grande sipping some tea in the form of a water bottle and popping that eyeball off to the side. You also get access to members-only live streams, which are predominantly going to consist of my Oscars predictions brainstorming sessions, where I'm going to basically reorder my predictions before they go live on the channel. If all of this sounds great, or you just want to support a creator out here in the garage, drinking beer, talking about movies, then please click join below and join the rest of the garage executives out here. Let's get on with this week's ranking. My number 10 from the 2022 Oscars is Encanto. Now, what I need to tell you, and I didn't issue this disclaimer at the top, this is just my personal opinion. This is how I would rank the 10 that I have in front of me to choose from. The criteria being, obviously, you had to have won the Oscar in the last 10 years in this category. So based on the 10 that I have, this is the 10th best. I will say this is the rare occurrence where I like all 10 entries on this countdown. So it's not necessarily that Encanto is the worst on this list. It's just that it's the one I liked 10th best. I don't know. From the 22 Oscars, you know, Disney had this run, and you're going to see that on this video. I like the movie. I love the songs, maybe even more so. We Don't Talk About Bruno. Come on, that's an all-time classic in the Disney canon now. And imagine being Maribel in this story. Your whole family, the house that you live in, is magical. Everybody has magical powers except you. You feel left out. Obviously, there is a mirroring of reality versus the kind of supernatural or fantastical here. Sometimes a lot of kids or siblings feel like they're the outcast, and how they deal with being different, right? So we're kind of getting that story regurgitated here in Encanto, but I still liked it enough, even with the lack of originality, just because of the community that's being represented, specifically here in Colombia. I thought it was awesome to bring that to the forefront because it doesn't have to always be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed princess that's suffering from some type of depression and then being saved by some white male with a perfect jawline. And we're starting to get further and further away from that, which used to pretty much always be the case with some of these Disney films. Another thing I'm going to do, and I do on all these rankings, is I give you the nominees from that particular year, and I tell you what I would have voted for, what I think the winner should have been based on what the nominees were that year. So here you see the nominees on the screen. Encanto, obviously you're a winner. Of these, we had another Disney one in the mix here with Luca, which actually I prefer Luca to Encanto, honestly, although I like them both pretty similar, probably 7 out of 10 for me. My winner here, though, would be the Mitchells versus the Machines. We're going to be talking about one of the Spider-Verse films a little bit later on this video, which is Lord Miller also in that style of animation. I think, for my money, the Mitchells versus the Machine is the best version of that animation from that studio that we've gotten, personally. Number 9 is more Disney, and this time it's Toy Story 4. I like this movie, but I'm also kind of upset that I like it. And furthermore, why is there a part 5 coming out? You are already probably typing in the comments something to the effect of money or box office or greed or whatever, and I agree with you. That's obviously the reason why. These characters, Woody, Buzz, and the gang, continue to make money hand over fist for Pixar and for Walt Disney Studios. So that's why we're continuing to get these, whether it's in TV iterations or sequels or little shorts that they put on Disney Plus, whatever. I understand that that's the reason why. But the Toy Story trilogy, if you will, 1, 2, and 3, was literal sublime perfection. That is easily, or I should say would have easily been, one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. And I'm not just talking about animation, I'm talking about period in the history of cinema. It was a perfect send-off for Andy, who was the kid that we had been following his journey with his toys growing up, and the representation that they had in his life at different points of his life, and how a lot of us grew up with Andy while he was growing up in the series. And then guess what? Here comes a cash grab in Toy Story 4. I remember being really pissed off. Then they cast Keanu Reeves, and I'm like, all right, kind of as an evil character. Hang on a second. Maybe I need to see that. And I took my little ones to see it because it's Toy Story. They love it. They love the characters. They don't know the difference between a sequel and the first. They don't know, And they loved it, and it was such a good movie. And I'm like, shit, Pixar, you did it again. And there you have your nominees from this year. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, how we've come full circle with the live action being out now. I know there was some chatter on the circuit that year for a little independent, weird, kind of R-rated animated film called I Lost My Body, which I think if that movie had been nominated this year or in the last couple of years, with some of the wins and some of the nominees that we've been getting from the animated branch, it may have won, but it couldn't beat the Disney machine in 2020 at the Oscars. But my vote would have gone to I Lost My Body. That is a beautiful, kind of surrealistic, fantastical story of finding your true self. When are we going to get to a non-Disney movie? Not yet. My number 8 is from 2016, and that is Zootopia. I love Zootopia. I love the voice casting with Jason Bateman, Jennifer Goodwin, Idris Elba, Jenny Slate, Bonnie Hunt, J.K. Simmons. I mean, so many great, I'm probably forgetting a few, Alan Tudyk, Octavia Spencer. I'm probably still forgetting some. This was an all-star cast in terms of the voice casting in this film. And this is another kind of cliched, played out narrative that somehow, just like I mentioned with Encanto, Disney is able to make fresh and make you kind of forget that, oh, I've seen this movie 100 times. And in this case, it's being different. It's being an outcast, very similar to Encanto. It's being the one that's a nerd amongst a group of jocks, or the one that's goth amongst a group of preps, or whatever the case may be. And in a lot of cases, a lot of people feel like it was racially motivated as well, because it's like, certain races are minorities for a reason, or they're looked down on because they're not the predominant majority race. So in Zootopia, it breaks down and gives you that class system, but it's not racial necessarily, even though thematically it could be seen that way, but it's more based on what type of animal you are, as this is a world of animals. So you have that kind of cool, important narrative in the film as well, on how we can all coexist. Why can't we all just get along? Again, it's a narrative that's been used way too many times, but it feels fresh in this movie because of the way it's being presented to us. And looking at the nominees from the 2017 Academy Awards, almost the oldest movie on this list, but not quite, just by a year, there were some good ones here. I really liked My Life as a Zucchini, The Red Turtle. Moana was also a Disney property that I really, really enjoyed. I probably still prefer Zootopia just a smidge, but they're almost tied as well. The music in Moana is superior, but otherwise they're pretty similar films for me. But the best film on here is Kubo and the Two Strings, in my opinion. Lakia Studios is the studio behind that, and I love their stop motion mixed with hand-drawn kind of style of animation. We got it in Paranorman. We got another Oscar-nominated film, The Missing Link, very recently. Obviously, Coraline. I love that studio, and I love the way they present these really kind of almost like family-friendly, but eerie in a way, too. Like a creepy family-friendly film. We are still not out of the Disney bunker yet. At my number 7, next up is Pete Docter's Soul from 2020. Music is the heartbeat of the story. It's not the story, but without it, the movie would not be as vibrant and alive as it is. And the same thing happens in Soul, in my opinion. Joe Gardner is a guy who loves jazz, who loves music, and there's an adventure that his character goes on that's somewhat otherworldly and surrealistic and afterlife and all that kind of shit. But music's the through line. I love when filmmakers take something that's also in the arts, cinema obviously is, and something else, whether that's writing or television or music, or writing, books, authors. There'll be a lot of stories around authors. And that's the central kind of like, without this, none of the other stuff that we're telling you is going to really connect. And Soul did a wonderful job from an animated standpoint in doing that, where music was the heartbeat of that film as well. Soul is a great film. It's one of the best in their catalog, especially if you're looking at the Pixar branch. It's probably top 10 Pixar, and that's based on my ranking. Maybe that's one that I'll do here on the channel. If you guys want to see my Pixar tier list or rankings, let me know down below and I'll make that happen sometime when the next Pixar movie drops, which Elio just dropped and I haven't seen that yet. In looking at the 2021 Oscars, the nominees here, another few Disney ones, or a couple, Soul obviously, and Onward as well, which was another one that I really did like. It was another COVID movie, so it was like straight to Disney Plus. I think it may have had a day and date situation, but that was a good story about brotherhood. I really dug that one. I think that honestly Wolfwalkers would probably get my vote here. That was another. You can see with these nominees, if you follow the Oscars, you'll get what I'm saying. If you're just tuning into this because you love animated movies, you might not know what I'm talking about. But you can see this was 2021's Oscars, and we already mentioned a couple, where the nominees in these fields are getting less and less like mass appeal Disney billion-dollar box office, right? And then these kind of unique auteur type of animated films become much more than just like cartoon movies, that people might say back in the old days. They're movies and they're films in their own right, but I would go Wolfwalkers. We finally pop out of the Disney bubble here for my number 6, which is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio from 2022 or the 23 Oscars. We all pretty much know the story of Pinocchio, a wooden puppet that Geppetto created out of necessity for being lonely, basically, and for the loss of his wife, and how the creation of this puppet and then the magical part of it coming to life, whether your interpretation is he imagined it or it actually happened and there is magic, or however you interpret that, the old Wizard of Oz thing, right? Maybe it's real, maybe she dreamed it, who knows? Still tells a tale of what he was going through. So the POV in GDT's Pinocchio is much different than the iterations that we'd gotten in the past, and we'd actually gotten one that same year from Disney, from Rob Reiner, I believe it was, and that was I don't know what the hell that Pinocchio was. That was one of the worst movies of that year by a mile, that tried to recreate that kind of child-friendly version, and the animation was not great. The story was very bland, but Guillermo del Toro gives us something very, very unique with very familiar territory within the story. It was just much less kid-friendly. Kids could still watch it, but it was a much more serious tone thematically and throughout the movie, while still pretty much telling the same story. And I love seeing Guillermo del Toro latch on to something that's kind of historical in literature or in pop culture and turning and putting that little stamp of his on it. He does it with pretty much everything that he does. He's doing Frankenstein this year, and I absolutely cannot wait for his version of that. And he did it here with Pinocchio. It falls at my number 6. And looking at the nominees from the 2023 Academy Awards, Marcel the Cell with Shoes On won my heart. I mean, absolutely won me over. It was one of my favorite movies of that year. I loved it so much that at the time my son was, I think, 9. And for Father's Day that year, he got me a little Marcel. Look at that guy. Is it going to zoom in on it? I don't know, maybe. Look at him. There he is. What's up, Marcel? How are you? We got 2 more Disney movies to get through on the list as we get into my top 5. My number 5 is one of them, and it is from 2017 or the 2018 Oscars, and that is Coco. I am a horror fanatic. If you look behind me, if you followed any of my previous videos or my podcasts in the past, you know that. I have the sign to prove it. So to tell a family-friendly story about death and dealing with death, and Pixar has a knack for just doing that anyway. They make kids and adults kind of face that head on. It's going to happen to all of us, whether we like it or not. We're going to die. People that we love are going to die, and it's just a fact of life. So Disney Pixar in this film Coco tell that story, and how this young boy Miguel deals with death and losing loved ones but it's told through the lens of the Day of the Dead, which as a horror fan is generally a aesthetic that I really, really like. And you have the Latino culture built into that. And again, another thematic huge element of music in this film as well. There's a lot of really cool scenes in the afterlife. Think of like a Beetlejuice type situation, but told from Pixar animation style. It's so much fun. It's very, very touching, and a lot of emotion in this movie too. And some great voice casting, great direction. Coco, with the exception of one other Disney film, is my favorite Disney film of the last 10 years has won an Academy Award, as it sits here at my number 5. And looking at the nominees for animated feature that year, there were some, this was a weird group. Coco was the obvious winner this year, although I'm an apologist for Boss Baby. You guys need to get off that movie's junk because it kind of rules. I don't know what to tell you. But aside from Boss Baby, I don't really, I like some of these other films, but they're not like steadfastly stuck in my head the way Coco is. And Boss Baby is just kind of slapstick fun. I don't know that I would say it's like the animated movie of the year. I think the obvious winner here, and for the first time on this countdown, I would also match up with the Academy, and I would have voted for Coco to win this year. Coming in at my number 4 is The Boy and the Heron, from, of course, the legendary filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki. This is another one that's a bit of a wartime film, much like I mentioned with Pinocchio earlier, and it kind of incorporates the elements of a few different ones that I've already mentioned. And the young boy in this film, our main character, the boy, is dealing with death, right? He loses his mom tragically in the early part of the film. And the general anchor of the movie and plot is Miyazaki's way, visually for the most part. There is dialogue in the film, but it's a story that's really told very vividly visually. And it's told of him dealing with that and losing her and what it means to be without her, to be without the one that, his mother. And then this heron comes in and is seen as a heron, but also as a bit of a angel or presence, I don't know. It gets weird. The movie gets weird after the first half or so. And it was a very abstract film that honestly, people were even worried about it getting a nomination. And then it ended up winning on top of that. I did predict it to win that year, but it was also like a 50-50 split. Half the pundits were saying this, and half the pundits were saying Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel in that series. There was a stacked group of nominees this year. Let's look at it real quick. As you can see, all 5 of these films, at least I think so, are top tier. I mean, literally, you could have given the award to any of 5 of these movies and it would have made sense from a quality standpoint. I also absolutely adore Neon's Robot Dreams, which is a dialogue-free animated movie. We'll get to that here in a second. It came before the other one that ended up winning the Oscar. But I would probably give my vote to Nimona. Nimona really hit me at the right time. It was just beautiful animation, very similar to the Across the Spider-Verse Lord Miller style, actually. It had that, it was influenced by that, obviously, that hand-drawn mix of digital comic book kind of vibe. Coming in at my number 3 is the most recent winner, the current battalion holder for the Academy Award for Animated Feature, and that is Flow from last year's Oscars. The Latvian film, also nominated for International Feature. Of course, I'm Still Here from Brazil won that. But then you get to Animated Feature, and it wins there. It upsets, I would argue, The Wild Robot, which actually I predicted to win because The Wild Robot was winning literally everything last award season, including from the Animation Guild. But Flow was a movie and a narrative, frankly, from filmmaker Zibalautas from Latvia that could not be overlooked. It was irrefutable, so touching, so endearing, so infectious. The guy was freaking gold on the award circuit. I don't even think he had a publicist, or at least he didn't when the award season was going on. But if he did, give them a raise because, oh my God. I mean, there was a video that went viral of him watching the news when he found out that they were getting nominated for the Oscar. And he's on his bed by himself with his dog, feeding his dog treats and acted like he was barely even fazed by it when they announced it. There's stories of him making these animated features that take years. I think they said Flow took 7 years to make, making them on his literal laptop with an animated program that you'd actually get a free version of. My son gave it a shot in his bedroom. you know, like in the middle of the night. And then fast forward 7 years later and he wins the Oscar. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. It would be like you sitting down to make like a short film on your iPhone, you know, with your buddies. And then 7 years later, you win an Oscar for making a short film by the same medium. It's just kind of crazy. And I am a cat guy. If you know me, you know that. I have 3 cats of my own, actually. And one of them is a black cat named Felix. If we had gotten him after this movie came out, I probably would have named him Flo. I love when a cat is in the movie, first of all, but when it's the central character in the movie, sign me up, brother. Probably the most inspired win in this category in the last 10 years, even more so than Miyazaki, I would say. And looking at the nominees from last year's Academy Awards, I think that The Wild Robot was the runaway and still is, I believe, an upset that Flo ended up winning. Memoir of a Snail was a great movie. I dug the sequel to Inside Out 2. And Wallace and Gromit is always really strong as well. But I think my vote here would have also gone to Flo, even though I didn't predict it to win last season. Again, the cat thing, the no dialogue, the beautiful animation, the wonderful adventure story that we get. And it's just visual told to us. We don't need exposition. We don't need the animals to talk to us to connect to them. So for, I think, the second time on this countdown, I match up with the Academy. Coming in at my number 2, the runner-up on this countdown is 2018's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I can remember seeing this in the theater with my son, Logan, who at the time would have been about 7 years old, 6 or 7, and they had a Spider-Man in costume at the theater for the premiere. And I've never seen a young kid, just the way he was just connected to what was going on and how he felt like he was a part of the lore, you know, being in that moment with Spider-Man there. I mean, we love movies anyway, so just the power of movies. And then when we're in the movie, you know, Miles has the whole thing where he's like, you know, gives the whole monologue at the end about you can be Spider-Man, anybody can be Spider-Man, we can be heroes, you know, anybody can be a hero on any given day, or whatever he's saying. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And my son, who's 7, looks over at me with the Spider-Man mask that they had given us at the theater, you know, because they had swag or whatever. And he says, you know, Dad, I can be Spider-Man. So the experience of it is easily my number 1. The movie itself, I also think very, very highly of it for no other reason than that experience, but also just the animation style and how we got a new kind of curveball thrown into the mix in the world of animation, because Pixar had reinvented things in the 90s and it dominated the digital landscape, and you had other studios like DreamWorks and Sony come along and do the same thing, and some were better than others, and they would tweak this and tweak that and do this, and humans would look better than do this, whatever, water, whatever. But then we get to this and it's like, well, that's different. It's like the same, but there's something else going on there. And even when I was watching it in the theater, I'm like, is there something wrong with the projector? You know, and then you start to be like, oh, okay, this is the visual style here. And looking at the nominees from that year, there's a couple that I really like. It was another heavy Disney year, but I would also give my vote to this one. So another one that I match up with on the Academy, but Into the Spider-Verse would have also gotten my vote, and it ranks as my runner-up. And that only leaves one more film. My number 1 animated feature winner of the last 10 years is the oldest one on this list from 10 years ago, from the 2016 Oscars, and that is Pete Docter, second time he's shown up, Inside Out. Man, Pixar had been dominating the scene, like I said. They had the digital animation landscape. There was this whole thing kind of going around where it was like, the humans don't look realistic enough. They're not photorealistic. They're too cartoony. So we're doing animals, we're doing monsters, we're doing, you know, whatever, and, you know, different insects and Bugs Life and all that shit. And by the way, I love all that stuff. But they were doing all these workarounds to not have to like put the humans front and center necessarily. Inside Out comes along and we start to see that kind of turn a little bit, because you have the parents in this movie and Riley, right? And they do look a little bit better. And now you look to now and it's like they look like people, you know, like normal humans now for the most part. I mean, Pixar humans, but still, you know, there was a reason why we never really saw Andy's face or Andy's mom's face in the first couple of Toy Story movies, because they just couldn't make the humans look right. So that starts to change a little bit in the Pixar front. And now it's like, there's no looking back. But aside from that, they took that and they said, okay, that's that, but we're also going to give you these kind of like human-like characters, but they're inside the mind of this young girl, Riley, who was 11 in the film. My son's 11 now, so watching it now is kind of a trip too, and the sequel, of course, came out last year. But brilliant, absolute brilliant screenwriting to create these characters and to make them as dense as they were, but their emotions So that character or that representation only really knows what it's supposed to know. You know what I mean? Like anger only really knows anger, you know, etc. And it was just brilliant. It was such a great idea. And of the movies that won the last decade, it's my number one by a mile. It's definitely my favorite. I would say you might be looking at like the first Incredibles, maybe Monsters Inc., and then like Toy Story 3. But aside from those, this is probably my favorite Disney Pixar movie. It's definitely in my top 5, and it ranks number 1 out of the last decade of animated feature winners. And in looking at the nominees from that year, I think it's a no-brainer that I'm going to match up with the Academy again, which I think happened 4 out of 10 times on this video. It's not too bad, actually. And like I said, this is one of the very few times on the whole countdown where I liked all 10 movies that I was talking about. But for me, I would also match up here, and I would have given my vote to Pete Docter and the gang for Inside Out. All right, guys, that's it. Another decade ranking in the books there. I'm going to be coming back real soon. I think I'm going to do best editing, the best editing winners of the last decade. I think it's going to be next. I'm going to do that in honor of my daughter. As I said, she's actually a professional editor. And of course, I do a little video editing out here. I mean, it's, you know, not Oscar worthy necessarily, but I do it. So make sure you subscribe to be here for that. And please let me know what your favorite animated feature winner of the last decade was. How off was my ranking in your opinion? And of the movies that got nominated the last 10 years, which one do you think should have definitely won? Let me know that down below. I appreciate all your comments and all your engagement on these videos. I will see you guys next time out here in the garage.